What's going on, people? Today I'll be talking about the best of 2010s. And this kind of goes without saying, and unfortunately it is something that I actually have to say. This is just a list of films that really spoke to me in this decade, and it's all subjective, like everything else that I do on this channel. So if you don't see something that you thought was the best of the decade, instead of raging about it like people tend to do, even though I don't have those kind of comments usually on this channel, just, comment down below and just let me know your take on anything that you thought that I missed. And we can have a discussion about it there. And you know what? I actually would love to hear everybody's top 10 list down below. Let's see how many people I can actually get. And that would be something that I would love to talk to people about in the comment section. And I just want to say that these are in no working order. And that is just because of the fact that there are a handful of movies on this list that I feel like are on the same level with each other, and to say one is better than the other, it just, to me, isn't that fair, As long as these films made it on this list, I feel like that is as good as you can possibly ask for. And without any other further ado, let's get straight into it. And the first one, I chose to go with the one that people just would expect me to go with, and I just feel like I'm just going to get it out of the way now. Mad Max Fury Road. And this is actually on a lot of people's best of 2010s list, and it deserves to be, just because of the fact that the movie is just freaking awesome, and that just so well applies to this movie. It is badass. It's just cool. When you're talking about stunt work, when you're talking about just beautiful, jaw-dropping cinematography, and when you're talking about a movie that takes you to a place that you have never been before and takes you on a journey, and you really feel like you are into this film, I feel like this movie perfectly defines that notion, and I love it. And like I said, getting the stereotypical movies out of the way, the ones that you guys would expect me to say, I think Avengers, the original first Avengers that came out in 2012, is one of the best movies of the decade, just because of the fact that when you're talking about a popcorn movie that really satisfies you and really just gives you everything you want out of that experience, and just really leaves me fulfilled, I feel like Avengers definitely does that. And wow, I was so hyped when I went to go see this film when it was out in theaters in 2012. I went the day that it came out, and it just didn't disappoint me. So often you can get hyped for a movie and it just peters out, and not just like it turns out to be a bad movie, but just not what you expected. And I feel like this movie is just an expert at giving you everything that you expected and more. And it is just what makes me a fan of this entire Marvel Cinematic Universe. And another film that was absolutely one of the best of the decade, and is actually on a lot of people's best of lists here. You can't talk about the best of the 2000s or the 2010s without mentioning Christopher Nolan. And that is because he makes some of the best films. He's just a great filmmaker. And even though I feel like his 2000 films are better than the films that he's made in this decade, I feel like the best film that he made in this decade is Inception. And Inception is definitely worthy of getting put on a best of the decade list. This movie is intricate. This movie is involving, engrossing, and really just like again, Mad Max Fury Road puts you in this kind of pseudo-futuristic world that is just very engrossing and you want to know more. And I was just hooked by this film in that quality. And I feel like one thing that people overlook about Inception is just just giving people what they want from a real mind-bending film like this, and really just always keeps people wanting more, and that is so important. And like a good filmmaker like Christopher Nolan, he never goes back to that well, and he always just really keeps people in suspense and keeps people wanting, like you want to do. And, you know, if this movie was just heavy on the over-explaining and a lot of that, I feel like it wouldn't grip people as much, and people wouldn't remember it like they do today. And my last film that is on almost everybody's list, and it is actually a surprise to me, you know, is The Social Network. And that is because, you know, I love a good David Fincher movie. He is probably one of my favorite directors out there today, even though I am always just screaming for just more David Fincher films. He doesn't make a whole lot of movies, really. And one of his best films in his oeuvre is The Social Network. It is a movie that is just probably has the best script out of all of the films that I am going to be putting on this list. It is the best written movie, you know, and it just shows in its dialogue. Aaron Sorkin is just a genius when it comes to writing scenes that shouldn't feel tense, but yet they are. And this movie is filled with this. This movie is the antithesis of that. And it is so important for this movie. The performances here are excellent. The storytelling here is top-notch. And the tension here never lets up. This is absolutely what I want out of a drama, and I love it for that. And now we're going to be getting into films that aren't on everybody's list, and this is something that I was more looking forward to just because I don't really feel like it is necessary for me to just reiterate everything that people have already, you know, put in a list that you can see everywhere else. So I really tried to think outside of the box on a lot of these coming up next. And that is very much the case with Gone Girl. Like I said, I love a good David Fincher movie, and this is just a great David Fincher movie. And, you know, you have performances from actors that you wouldn't associate with the level of performances that are here, like Tyler Perry, and to a lesser extent, Ben Affleck and Rosamund Pike, and really just get the best performances out of all of those actors in a movie that is less tense than The Social Network, I would say, but more of a thriller, and really a movie that really causes you to have questions and really question people's motives more than in The Social Network. I feel like in The Social Network it kind of really spells things out for you a lot more than in this particular film, where it leaves it more of a mystery and more ambiguous until it is all revealed at the end. I feel like this movie, as far as a thriller, is the best of the decade, and that is why I put it on this list. It is probably one of the best acted thrillers of the decade, largely because of the fact that Rosamund Pike is amazing in it, and I want to see her in more films, and more films like this, because she is absolutely riveting in this movie. And the next is Creed. Now, I did do a Rocky Balboa just top list when Creed 2 came out, And if you saw that, you'll know how much I really do love Creed. But in case you didn't see that, I'm just going to reiterate it here. I love this movie. And it very much is the reason why this channel even exists. Period. When I saw this movie in theaters, it very much inspired me. And I felt like I had an obligation to put my feelings, not just about this movie, but about just film and movies and physical media and all of that kind of stuff. Just put it out there. And that was the beginning of my journey to this channel. And I feel like that is just because of how much Creed inspired me. And I love the character of Adonis Creed. I feel like he just has a lot more going on in as a character than Rocky does. And I feel like the character of Creed and his relationship with Rocky just elevates the character of Rocky and puts him in a place where they tried to put him with Rocky V, as kind of the trainer, but really done in a more smart, less ham-fisted way that makes more sense and is more plausible for the character of Rocky. And this movie is just inspiring, and it is just electric. And Michael B. Jordan is such a great actor. I see almost everything that he is in, and this movie was the beginning of that for me. And while we're on the subject of movies like Rocky, you know what? I feel like I have to talk about my love for the movie Warrior. I absolutely love this movie, and it has so much heart to it in a way that is kind of like a machismo guy kind of way, but I really do like it, and you can just feel the pain of these characters in this film so much, and the passion that they have, not just for each other, but for, like the MMA style wrestling that this movie portrays so much that it is just palpable and infectious. And you know what? I watched some MMA today because of Warrior. And, when you want to see a movie that inspires you like Rocky, but isn't Rocky, you can't do much better than Warrior. And you know what? I feel like this is one of those films that actually has the performances and the acting to really back that up. My next film on the list is something that will surprise you guys. But really, for people that know me really like personally and my taste in films, I feel like it isn't that much of a surprise. But Mission Impossible Fallout is one of the best action movies of this decade, and that is because of Tom Cruise and the stunts that he did for this movie. It is insane, and I love it for that. And the guy's just a crazy bastard in that way. Nobody can do this better than Tom Cruise can. And there might be somebody that is more physical than Tom Cruise is when it comes to action scenes. But when you're talking about like big budget action, this movie is the antithesis of that because of the lengths that Tom Cruise goes to. It's crazy. And I actually feel like this is the best written Mission Impossible film of all of them. I love how they put little just hints and like little bits in this film that if you remember what happened in all of the others, it ties it in together. It's great. And I love what this movie actually wants to say about the character of Ethan Hunt, because this movie actually has something really good to say about him. And I just really love this movie. I've gone back to it even since it came out about like 2 or even 3 times. It is just that good. And I can't think of a movie that has action better than this film, except for Mad Max Fury Road, and that's on this list too. Now, another one that's on this list that I didn't expect to be on it, but the more that I think about the movie, the more I just feel like it has to be there, is Whiplash. And that is because it just speaks to me on such a personal level. And I felt that the minute I saw this movie. And that is just because it, to me, is just about these 2 characters that are just so passionate about music and about playing instruments and about just what they are passionate about, that I feel like they are just destined to clash against each other as they just aspire to be the best that they can be. And there is no room for the other. And even though I am not as competitive as these characters are, just because of the fact that it's just a highly dramatized version of the kind of stuff that happens with 2 people that are very competitive with each other, I feel like it speaks to me as somebody that is just deeply, deeply passionate about something. In my case, it is film or movies and physical media. And I just, in my life, could not continue just keeping it in. And I just wanted to share it with people. And that is just how I choose to carry that out. And it is very therapeutic for me. But these characters in this film, specifically J.K. Simmons, I feel like carried out in a very different way that is very entertaining and very riveting. And I just love this film. And lastly, I had to put at least one horror movie on here, just to represent how much I love horror films. I wish there was actually 2 on here. I almost put It Chapter 1 on here, actually. But I really do think that Hereditary is the best horror movie of the 2010s. Just because of how it affected me emotionally more than just in a typical horror setting, horror sense. You know, at the beginning of this film, something truly horrific happens that I won't spoil for anybody that hasn't seen it. But for me, that is not the most horrific thing in this movie. Because what is truly horrific, what truly scares me, is me getting to the point where I am just so distant and so vicious as the characters are in this film with each other and their families. It's scary to me how a character can just become so dissociated with their family to the point where they are just psychotic. And the way that it is portrayed in this film, just how it is just almost predestined. There is no way that the character that Toni Collette plays in this film can go through the things that she goes through in her life and end up being just a loving parent. There is just no way. And I just feel like she was just damned from the beginning. And that is just something that is truly, truly horrific. And much of the horror in this film comes from that. I just love this film. And Toni Collette's performance is one of the best performances of the entire decade, and she was completely snubbed at the Oscars that year. And to just give some honorable mentions, you know, I almost put It Chapter 1 here, like I said, and that is only because of the fact that as a traditional horror movie, I just feel like that movie hits all the marks. It is just great. Great storytelling, great jump scares to the point where they don't feel like very manipulative. They just feel like very earned. And unlike the directing in It Chapter 2, I feel like the directing in It Chapter 1 is very, very, very great. Another is Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. You know, I don't talk a lot about animation on this channel just because I feel like animation doesn't change a whole lot. And I just get the same vibe from a lot of animation to the point where I just feel like if I reviewed a lot of animation, I just feel like I'd be saying the same things and hitting the same points and really reiterating myself a lot. And that's not something that I wanted to do with this channel, so that's why I don't talk a lot about animation. But this movie just takes that notion that I have and slaps me across the face with it just because of the fact that it's just a fresh take on animation. How this movie is animated and the skill that is here and the innovation, it just can't be overstated. It's just amazing. And I just love the animation style to this movie and what it does for Spider-Man as a whole and the character of Miles Morales. It's just great. And you know what? I feel like the only thing that keeps this movie from being on my top 10 of the whole entire decade is the fact that I feel like even though this movie tells the story very well, I feel like it is a story that I've seen before. And I can't shake that, really. And I try to save all my spots on this list for movies that provide something new and something unexpected in its storytelling to the point where I feel like this movie kind of doesn't deliver on that. But that's by design, and they even joke about it in this movie. I feel bad about dinging this movie for that, but I can't help it. I do feel it. And lastly, and certainly not least, I feel like I have to mention the first John Wick movie. It is what I want from Gun Fu, and it is what I want from Keanu Reeves. He is having a renaissance now because of this movie. And when you're talking about a movie that has like 80s style action, that really evokes that, so many movies want that. You know, I feel like The Expendables wants that and just completely doesn't get it. This movie gets it. And it's great for that. And it innovates in a way that is great because of its just storytelling. And that's something that can't be overstated. The storytelling here is simplistic but effective. And it leaves room for the franchise to expand on that in a very smart way. And I just love this movie for that. So, that is my best of the 2010s. I hope this didn't go on too long. Let me know your best of 2010s. Comment down below. And I am actually filming Gemini Man, my review for the Blu-ray and 4K. I'm going to be filming that right after this. I actually watched it right before this, so you can expect that really damn soon. As always, thank you for watching my videos. You guys are awesome. I don't need to say it because you know it. And I will see all of you next time.